I mean, I think we're getting to the point now where we can start talking about this Lions team as a Super Bowl team. And that is obviously my first takeaway here is that the Lions are a legit Super Bowl threat now. And we haven't been able to say that since our parents have been alive.
At
Maybe,
least.
yeah. Like,
I mean, I have some loving memories of Calvin Johnson and Matthew Stafford, but were they a good football team?
no, they
No.
had a playoff appearance here and there, but they've JFK has missed one Lions playoff win. Like this is where we're at here. But this team, man, like I can't say that I expected this. I had them somewhere in the teens, but they're balling out right now, and I just want to first touch on Jared Goff, man. And I think this all comes back to him. This is a guy that a lot of people had as a mid-tier, you know, outside of the superstars with the Kirk Cousins, with the Dak Prescotts, that kind of quarterback heading into the season. And he's continues to prove that he's not that guy. Like he was a number one overall pick, had a slow start, then was able to build himself up and kind of got labeled as only being able to work with McVay. And now you're seeing it in Detroit as well. He's got an excellent play caller here, which helps a good bit, but he's being able to create a little bit more out of structure, go move through your reads and stuff like that. He's also always had the arm talent, always had the arm strength. He's got a good enough arm, and he's playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL right now. I mean, he doesn't get thrown in that conversation when we start talking about it because of what the Dolphins are doing with Tua and Mahomes and those types of guys. But Jared Goff is a legitimate MVP candidate right now, especially with the Lions' current record. Like this offense is fourth in the NFL in points per game, fourth in yards per game. They're towards the top in EPA per play as well. And that's just one phase of it. The running game for this offense has also been fantastic. A lot of people, myself included, wanted to see more of Jahmyr Gibbs, but David
I will
Montgomery.
take my flowers, by the way, on David Montgomery. I think it's about time that I did that.
Go ahead.
Uh, he was the guy. Like I'm not saying that he was the guy before the season, but I was like, hey, like despite how he's been looking in that first game that we watched, I remember I was in the airport when I was sending you guys texts, but it's like he's a great between the tackles back. He's a guy that is going to get hit 3 or 4 times in a single run, and it doesn't really matter. Jahmyr Gibbs just isn't that guy. You need that change of pace. That's all I was saying. And David Montgomery ended up being a lot better than I thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
But I was in the camp that he is good rather than bad. So,
Yeah, I don't
continue.
think I don't think anybody saw this coming from David Montgomery. Like the level of
Absolutely.
play that he's been able to put together now. Unfortunately, he does get an injury in Sunday's game. I think it was a rib cartilage injury, and Dan Campbell did say that he may miss some time with that. The amount of time, not entirely sure, but I don't even know like how much worse this offense gets if it's like Craig Reynolds or somebody like that, or if it is Jahmyr Gibbs getting that full workload. Who really knows? Because this offensive line, another phase of this offense, this is the number 4 ranked offensive line in the NFL right now. That's why David Montgomery is able to be so productive, and just overall, it's a very, very good offense. We're starting to see
It's
Jameis
why Jared
Winston.
Goff is able to
Yeah,
be so productive.
he's able to
The whole
stay
offense.
clean. And then you look on the defensive side of the ball, and this was honestly the bigger shocker. Like I thought that this Lions offense would be pretty good, especially with the play calling and the weapons that they have. Dude, their defense is so much better than I thought it was. You want to talk about a single side of the ball that I am most surprised by for a singular team? I think in the entire NFL, it's this Lions defense, man. Like even with the improvements that they made, like they added Cam Sutton, they added Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, they did add Emmanuel Mosley. He's already injured, but they're able to get so much pressure. I mean, if you watch that Tampa Bay game, it felt like every single time that the Bucks had the ball, Baker Mayfield had to get it out within 2 to 3 seconds. Like he had to go every time
Yep.
because they're sending so much pressure. They're able to get so many clean rushers. And for a while, it did kind of feel like it was, or at least last year, it felt like it was Aiden Hutchinson and everybody else. And now these guys are starting to contribute, as well as Aiden Hutchinson taking that next step into
Yeah.
not that elite Myles Garrett, Nick Bosa, Michael Parsons, TJ Watt, Max Crosby tier, but he's definitely, I think, in that tier 2 of edge rushers with guys like Joey Bosa, Rashawn Gary, Trey Hendrickson. I think he's firmly put himself into that, and we're only in game, 24, 25 of his career. He can continue to make strides and potentially get into that tier 1 of edge rusher one day. Hell, at the rate that he's going, we could be seeing it very soon with the way that he's playing. So that's the other part of it. But just overall, and I really want to hammer home the golf point. I know that was what I started with, but he is the difference in why we think of this as being like, oh, this is a sneaky playoff team. They could win this division. To the improvements that he's made has moved them into like, they can win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. Like that could happen. And this point gets solidified by the fact that both the Eagles and 49ers lost this past Sunday. The Lions' only loss on the season is an overtime loss to the Seattle Seahawks in which they didn't get to have the football in overtime. So we could have been talking about coin flip goes a different way. We could be talking about the only 6-0 team in the NFL right now is in Detroit. Point. So I cannot believe that this is like my main takeaway from week 6. Nonetheless, like the fact that they're this good this early blows my mind, but Lions are a legit Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I mean, I can't add much more to that than you already glowingly said. I mean, this Lions team is legit, especially in the NFC. I mean, you mentioned the top dogs in the NFC both going down this past week, and the Lions look to be that it team right now. And it becomes such an interesting discussion because if this is a Super Bowl team, if you're standing on that mark, then Jared Goff should be paid like a quarterback that can get to the Super Bowl. And that's going to be the big question coming up here because they're already in contract negotiations. So it's obvious that you pay Jared Goff now, but is he that guy that's going to stay consistent? I think he will because this offensive line. I think this offensive line drives this whole team. I think that's what they focused on first when Dan Campbell came in and they restarted the whole rebuild. I mean, you got Sewell coming in. That was your first draft pick that you made in this rebuild of the Lions. So I think you set the tone there. You got Frank Ragnow there. You got a great collection of offensive linemen that is arguably the best in the league. I mean, I know they rank out as third, but do you think there is a better offensive line in the league? Especially with Lane Johnson possibly.
I was about to say that's the variables. If Lane Johnson is healthy, I still think the Eagles take the cake in that department. But the Lions' offensive line, you can make an argument for them to be that number one for sure. And like one more thing about Goff, like we walked into this offseason looking at that pick that they had from the LA Rams from the Matthew Stafford trade, and we're like, dude, if they can go up a couple spots here, they can go get an Anthony Richardson to go sit behind Jared Goff for the next few years.
Mm.
We were excited about Hendon Hooker. I know, like for dynasty leagues and stuff, everybody was like, "Oh, well, they're going to get Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker's going to start next year, 2 years, whatever." The year before, what if the Lions take Malik Willis at number 2 instead of Aiden Hutchinson or something like that, or even at 32, where they had the last pick in the first round from that Rams trade? Talking about a quarterback there, I think all of those conversations are done. Like I think Hendon Hooker. I didn't really like that pick. I mean, I get the process, but like he's only a couple years younger than Jared Goff. And to expect him to get to the point where Jared Goff was, and especially where he is now. I mean, this guy's number 1 graded quarterback on PFF. He's I believe in his last 17 starts, he's got 4,400 yards, like a 25-4 interception or touchdown interception ratio, 13-4 record. He's playing like one of those dudes, and I think that we just have this thought in our minds that he cannot ascend into that conversation. I think he's much closer to guys like Trevor Lawrence, to guys like Lamar Jackson, dare I say to guys like Justin Herbert, Jalen Hurts.
He is older than all of those guys.
No, but I'm saying quarterback rankings than he is to, Dak Prescott and that tier of Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr, that tier of quarterback that we had him in coming into the season. A lot of people had him in coming into the season. He's ascended much closer to those guys than he is to the lower tier group that we had him in.
Yeah, no, I could totally agree with that. Another guy before we move on that's also starting to ascend into elite company at his position, Sam Laporta, dude. I mean, there was a lot of question marks about whether Sam Laporta was the right pick when he got made. I mean, Michael Mayer was still on the board. You still had Darnell Washington still on the board. So it was kind of an interesting pick when they made it, and it's turned out in all the best ways. I mean, he's easily the best rookie tight end. He's the 5th ranked tight end in all of football right now, and he's another Iowa guy who's built for that, another Iowa tight end that seems like it's working out is awesome.
Yeah, and I think you got to credit a lot of that to Dan Campbell. Comes over as a tight end coach, gets this head coaching job, and he's had TJ Hawkinson. Now he's got Sam Laporta. He had 8 games of not having one of the 3 or 4 best tight ends in the league, because Sam Laporta, quite frankly, I mean, You don't see this from rookie tight ends. We talked about this, especially for fantasy purposes. We were like, oh, rookie tight ends, it's they usually don't get going until a year, 2 years. This is almost
Yep.
unprecedented in recent times to see a tight end play this in. It's not like a flash in the pan thing. I know we're only 6 weeks in, but he's been consistent week in, week out, getting production, and it's just another weapon for them. Amon-Ra, David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, Jamison Williams getting back into the fold. Josh Reynolds is playing really well. Like it's a lot of good going on in Detroit right now.